we were in the tunnel and we were getting ready to go out. And we hear this loud, USA,
Oh
USA.
my gosh.
Oh my gosh. And
Goosebumps again.
I look over and Dominique Dawes is in a ball on the floor. She didn't think she could walk out.
Welcome to the Stick the Landing podcast brought to you by Iron Business Solutions. Today, my guest is none other than the two-time U.S. Olympic Gymnastics team coach, USAG Hall of Fame member, and my good friend, Mary Lee Tracy. Mary Lee, welcome. It's good to see you again.
Well, it's good to see you, especially in those headphones.
Man, thank you. I've been looking forward to putting these things on all week. As we get into this, I'm reminded a few years ago, Sam Pesek had a podcast, and it was called something to the effect of, I've got cool friends, right? And I'm nowhere near as cool as Sam Pesek is, but I do have some really cool friends. And in fact, because she and I run in the same circles, some of our friends overlap, and you're one of them. So I'm super appreciative that you're here and able to do this podcast with me. So how are you and how was your drive?
Well, I'm very happy to be here, especially when I get to sit across from you in your headphones. And I had a really nice 5-hour drive south, and it was uneventful. And I was able to listen to one of my favorite audiobooks. And I'm at a nice hotel, so I'm quite happy.
Wait, is this the book that you were recommending me?
Yes.
Tell our audience the name of this book, because I can't wait to get started on this.
It's called Atomic Habits, and it's really part of growth in life to focus more on the process and the journey, and maybe take your eyes a little bit away from the goal so you can remain very present in the moment.
Yeah, awesome. I can't wait to start that. I've got to finish up. I'm in the middle of the history of the American people. Actually, I'm almost to the end of it, and Atomic Habits will be the next one I do. So thanks for the recommendation. Tell us how you got involved in gymnastics. Let's do like a little biography of who you are, right? Tell us how you got involved in gymnastics in the first place, because when a normal gymnastics type person looks at Mary Lee, who's what are you, 5'10" or
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, they go, well,
she didn't do gymnastics,
right? So and then to have the career that you had and the knowledge and the whatever blows our mind. So bring us in.
Well, what I did is I was always have been gifted with motivation. I love to motivate. And so I was a cheerleader, of course. And my cheerleading involved learning gymnastics because back in the day we did lots of tumbling when we were out on the field or on the basketball court. So I took gymnastics lessons. And the place I took gymnastics lessons is now the gym I own. Back
at that time, gymnastics business hadn't really evolved to what it is today. In fact, it was rarely actually a business. Many gymnastics schools were places that were pulling their equipment out of closets in gymnasiums, setting it up for the day, and then kids would go one at a time. So you were fortunate enough to attend one of the first like real legitimate gymnastics businesses and then purchase it, right?
Well, so this was one of those businesses like that because the facility was 5,000 square feet.
Which would have been huge.
Which was big back then. And the balance beams were never allowed to be on regulation because their hands would hit the ceiling.
Nice.
And on bars, we had what we called the doghouse. So I had some dads who cut out a doghouse.
Yeah, nice.
But some of our really tall girls actually on their giants tiptoed across. But it was very helpful when you were pirouetting because you could stop at the top and do your pirouette.
And you know, speaking technical or whatever, it actually was probably really good for pirouettes because some of those kids would have to learn to really push and extend tall when they're posting on one arm so that their toes could touch the ceiling and make that happen. So I'm going to be boring already.
No, it's okay. You know, there's a positive in everything. And so it really taught our kids how to pirouette on top of the bar. And then from there, this cheerleading thing, we had to wear these black and white saddles, and they were very expensive. They were maybe about $20 back in the day. And my dad said he wasn't going to pay for them, and so he told me I had to get a job. And so working at this gym was my first job to pay for my cheerleading shoes.
Wow. Awesome.
That's the beginning of how I became an Olympic coach.
You're listening to Stick the Landing podcast by Iron Business Solutions. If you want more information about these and other great products, visit us on the web or social media. Links in the description. Okay, so there has to be a bridge between, hey, I'm a cheerleader coaching some rec kids to pay for my saddle shoes, and I've got 2 kids on the floor at the 96 Olympic Games. So how did you go from just coaching in this guy's business as a sort of part-time thing to, hey, I'm going to get serious and I'm going to focus? And was it always your intention? Did you always want to have elite athletes once you started?
No intention. And I'm still not, I hate to say this, but I'm not a goal setter. I definitely am all about the journey. Like when people say, what did you love the most about what you do? I like the day-to-day training. I'm not keen on competition. I don't enjoy competition. I like the journey. And so I think that's why I was able to do what I did, because I was always been a little bit A-type personality. So when I didn't have the answer, I found it. And I wanted to get better and better, because these kids, as they started getting better, they wanted to win the state meet and they wanted to qualify to nationals, but I didn't know how to do it. And so I went to a lot of gym clubs and sat, because there was no YouTube. There was no anything, so you had to do it live.
Like back in our day, you had to go to the library and read something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How about it?
And I did that. I went to, I remember American Twisters in Florida and Buckeye Gymnastics and even Queen City Gymnastics
American
across
Twisters,
town.
Tim Rand.
Yes.
Yeah, good guy
Good
who
guy.
was always willing to help people below his station with no ego or whatever.
He let me come in for a week at a time, and I just sat there with my little notepad, which I was known for, just taking as many notes as I could. And so my journey was really gradual. You know, it was state, regionals, then, okay, let's try to get to nationals. And it was totally a learning process, figure it out. And I really enjoyed that. There was never a time where I took a giant jump. I just gradually went from compulsory kids to optional kids to then when I went into the elite world, somebody just said, you should take those kids elite. And that brings up Amanda and JC.
Wow. Well, okay, let me ask some fill-in questions here. Did you go to college?
No.
Okay. I asked the question, and you've heard me say this to you before. You have a brilliant mind. And so my assumption, based on the story you just told, that whatever schooling you did, you probably got straight A's everywhere, because you're a process-oriented person. And school is very process-oriented, that even if you're not a great test taker, if you're participating in the process as you go through, your assignments are going to be A's, your projects are going to be A's. How am I doing?
You're doing good, because I was an A student through my 12th grade year because of that reason.
Yeah.
I was on task. I did my homework. I studied for the test. I memorized for the test. Could I remember most of that now? Probably not. But anyway, so I didn't go to college. I actually started at the University of Cincinnati, lasted 1 semester, and felt like it wasn't relative to me becoming a gymnastics coach. So I moved on and just spent my life building and growing, not as much the business as just growing my team program. And I just kept going, and it interested me. It motivated me to keep trying to figure out how to get to the next level.
Wow. So in many ways, our stories are very similar, although different. I was the opposite in terms of being a student. In college, my parents would send me money to buy books, and I'd buy beer. And I would go to class, but with a newspaper. That's how old I am, because we didn't have internet. And I'd just read the newspaper. And I graduated college with like a 3.57 and was going to go to Vanderbilt Law School and all this stuff. But I didn't care anything about the process. I wanted the result for real. And the only reason Vanderbilt was even on the radar is I took the LSAT and scored in the 97th percentile, because I could take a test and I could do it. But all right, so here's how I got involved with women's gymnastics, since I just asked myself.
Tell us your story, Ken.
I did gymnastics when I was a kid, and I was terrible. I didn't have good coaches. We didn't have good facilities, but I'll say this: gymnastics saved my life because I didn't start gymnastics till I was 7, and didn't really get going in it till maybe like 9 or 10. And leading up to that, I was known in the neighborhood as sort of the bad kid that other parents told their children, "Hey, you can't hang out with little Kenny." And this is true. I accidentally set fire to a house when I was playing with matches, and I shouldn't have been. All kinds of dumb stuff like that. But when the community labels you as sort of the bad kid, you take on that identity as a kid. And so I just said, well, hey, if I'm bad Kenny, I'm gonna be bad Kenny, and I was the best bad Kenny I could be. Well, I started some recreational gymnastics, and the teacher there was like, hey, you're pretty good. Let's do some more advanced stuff. And I was pretty good for just some dumb rec kid with coaches who didn't know what they were doing, right? And I became known, even if it was by 2 or 3 people, as being Kenny the gymnast.
Oh,
And I liked that identity better than I liked bad Kenny. And
yeah.
and so I said, I'm gonna latch onto this. And so I did gymnastics and liked it. So all right, I did it in an era when men's gymnastics was really cool in the United States in the late 70s and 80s. And as you know, in 1980, we probably would have won the gold, or at the very least would have got silver with the men, except Carter boycotted the Soviet games. And so then in 84, the team was even more stacked, if you can believe that. And the games were in LA, and the Soviet Union boycotted those. So we never got to see what would have been a real clash of the Titans in 80 and 84 of USA versus USSR in men's gymnastics. But I still loved all those guys, and I didn't want anything to do with women's gymnastics at all until, Mary Lee, in 1987. I get one of my gymnastics magazines, and Brandy Johnson, I'm apologizing in advance for this, but it had a poster of Brandy Johnson in the center. And I took out this poster and said, I'm going to marry this poster.
Oh gosh.
You know, I'm a 15-year-old kid. I think she was 15. But here's this beautiful blonde with these big blue eyes and lashes and whatever. And I was like, man, I'm hooked. So I watched the 88 games, the women, because I wanted to watch Brandy Johnson. So let's just fast forward past my I'm madly in love with Brandy Johnson phase. Let's go all the way up to I'm in college now, 1990, I get to college, and I'm working at a gym where I, at first, am just coaching the boys' team because I don't know anything about girls' gymnastics. But I won't say the name of this gym or these people. But it's like Thursday, 5 o'clock or 5:30, the gym's packed, and these 2 women who coach the girls' team or assistant coaches on the girls' team get in a fist fight. I kid you not. Hair pulling, face punching, saying words that should never be said aloud, especially not in front of children. And of course, they have to be fired. And so the guy who's running the gym comes up to me at the end of the night and says, hey, would you like to coach our girls team? And I said, well, sure, but I mean, I don't know anything about girls team. And he says, listen, tumbling is tumbling, vault is vault, high bar and uneven bars are the same, and we'll just figure it out on beam. And I was like, all right, let's figure it out. And I fell in love.
Yeah.
I really, what I realized, I was in college. I was a political science pre-law major trying to go to law school and get into politics because as every good mother's dream is for their son, she dreamed I was going to be president of the United States one day. You know, I love you, Mom. Thanks for believing in me. It obviously wasn't going to happen, but it didn't sound like a bad plan, right? Like, hey, I'll be president. What the heck? But as I'm coaching there and coaching girls team, I realized I felt like I was born to teach.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember calling home and saying, Mom, Dad, I'm going to change my major to elementary education because I think I was born to teach kids. And they yelled and they swore and they cried. And for real, hand to God, Mary Lee, at that moment, I was like, it's probably easier to finish with this major, go to law school, and grow up and be an attorney than it is to fight these 2 at this point. So I said, all right, fine. I won't change my major. I'll stay the course. But the more I'm involved, the more I love it. And the truth is, you are part of the inspiration that eventually led me to say, hey, enough, because I went to Region 5 Congress and I don't remember what it was. It might have been 92 or 93 after the Amanda thing, which we're about to talk about. And you were giving some lectures or something there. And I was like, I left that Congress so inspired that I knew I'll finish this degree because this is what they want. But as soon as I graduate, I'm going to be a gymnastics coach. Well, fast forward to the beginning of my senior year, and my dad dies. And my mom says, hey, I can't afford to send you to law school. And I remember I'm holding the phone to my ear, and I took a deep breath and said, I can't afford for you to live vicariously through me anymore. I'm going to be a gymnastics coach. And I hung up the phone.
And that was it.
That was it. Yep. I graduated college, moved to Nashville to take a job for $15,000 a year coaching gymnastics, which, by the way, was $3,000 a year below the poverty line when I took that job. So, all right, that's my story. That's how I got involved. And let's talk about, in the midst of that, in 1991, you have this kid, Amanda Borden, who kind of comes out of nowhere, and she's like this. I'm watching the trials and everything. Now I'm invested. And she's this just adorable kid with that cute little haircut and this big smile who just looks like she's having the time of her life. And we get through championships where she placed 5th in the all-around, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then trials, which were a real shoot show for everybody. And she got 7th. So she technically earned a spot on the team. And then go.
Well, we were told that it was the top 7 would make the team. And
that's what they were saying on TV.
Top 7. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we did this. And Amanda's like, did I make it? Did I make it? And I said, well, let's just wait and see. And of course, she wasn't announced on the team. And I wanted to know why. I'm a rational person. Please explain when you told me it was the top 7 and she did the job twice, not once, but twice. And they said her lack of experience. And it was devastating because she did the job. And we both were ready to quit. I was done. This is too much work. You know, here we were working 30 hours a week, coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning before school. This isn't worth it. And so we both took a little bit of a break, about maybe, I don't know, a couple weeks. It wasn't long because we both are very passionate people and we did love the sport of gymnastics. So we decided to go to Woodward Gymnastics Camp that summer. And they were great to us. Ed Isabel was the owner at that time, and he knew what Amanda had gone through, and he just made such a big deal about her, and did autograph sessions and did a photo shoot, and just he was amazing to her, and that was the turnaround. And from that point on, we decided, both of us, that we were in it and that we were going to stay until the next Olympics. And then shortly after that, in walks little JC Phelps and a little wannabe, and she wanted to join our group. And I just always tell, for us, it was God putting the two right people together, because Amanda, by that point, had some experience and JC didn't. And, Amanda cried, JC never cried.
I seriously can't believe that, because Amanda, when watching her compete, and remember, I wasn't on the floor, I wasn't that kind of a coach then, but watching her on television, the reason I was rooting for her the whole time is she looked like she was having the time of her life.
Oh, she was. She was so emotional. And her mom, who I dearly love, Patty, they both were just an emotional female. And JC and I weren't. And, sometimes we would look at each other like, oh boy, here we go. Because I think you and I were talking about coaching kids, and you can't coach them all the same.
Right.
And Amanda just was one that if I said, boo, you didn't point your toe, she would start sniveling, is where JC would just kind of look at me and go, okay, and get the job done.
Yeah.
So in so many ways, they were so good for each other. And, the rest is kind of history.
Sure. We're gonna get to some of that history in a minute. But I have another question about this 92-ish time period. Leading up to championships and trials, did you think you had a shot? Because nobody, honestly, at at championships on television, they weren't talking about Amanda until you're a couple of rotations in and they're going, hey, this Amanda Borden kid. Like the cameras weren't really on her.
No.
So did you go, hey, I think we have a shot at making this Olympic team? Or were you just riding this train for the experience?
No, I
Okay,
didn't.
that's
I
fair.
didn't at all. Going into 92, and I mean 96, I had a little bit more of a feeling that it was possible.
You had experience now.
We had experience now, so it was a little bit different situation. But one of the coolest things is that in the process of the three of us, we were just such a great team together. It was all of us or none of us, which was a very scary little mantra that the three of us had together. And all the competitions that we would go to leading up to that, whether it was classics or championships or all the way up through trials, we would hold hands before a competition and we would say our prayer, and then we would always finish with all of us or none of us.
Wow.
Yeah,
How powerful.
it was very powerful.
And I'm getting literal goosebumps listening to this story right now. So I assume that because you and I have also talked that we both coach relationally,
Yes.
that a mantra such as all of us or none of us has created in the three of you a lifetime relationship. I know you, but let's talk to the audience about the fact that you, JC, and Amanda are still very close.
The best part about the story is that some of the roles have reversed. So Amanda and her husband have an incredible business, and so they mentor me. They help me. I'll come in and I'll do a clinic or a lecture, and then I just pick Brad's brain and he helps me. And Amanda or JC and her husband, Dave, it's the same type of thing. He's more the business person. And it's been huge that we could continue this long, and to the fact that my grandkids hang out with JC's kids and we all get together and go to the lake together. I mean, this is a lifelong relationship that will last forever. And up until I recently kind of retired, my relationships with my athletes were my source of motivation, because the depth of a relationship is how hard you can push an athlete. If there is no depth in relationship, you can't demand and expect things. But when you know that athlete and you know what their dreams and their goals are, you can expect things together. But if somebody just walks in my gym the first day, obviously you're not going to be able to motivate someone till you really know what their buttons are, what you got to push to motivate that athlete.
Good point. I wanted to ask a little bit about how you helped Amanda navigate the emotions of sort of being snubbed. And it sounds to me like there were people that were having to help you navigate the emotions. So give us just a tiny bit of either one or both of those.
It's
things.
really more about learning, and every part of gymnastics,
Of course
as
it is
you know,
with you. This is why I admire you so much.
Is learning, and it was letting go of the uncontrollables. And I had some.
How old?
Let's see, I don't know, 30 something.
So way too young to have that mature of a perspective. By the way, good job on you.
I did surround myself with people that knew better than me, and that was one of the things, because it wasn't fair. There was no way that it was fair. But life's not fair, and you have to let go of the uncontrollables. You have to let go of the disappointments and make sure you catch. And I would tell Amanda this: whatever lessons that were to be learned, let's learn them, so that when it comes to be our time again, we're ready.
Wow, those are inspiring words. I just need to have a Mary Lee recorder in my ear all day. This is great stuff. Good stuff. All right, so now let's scoot forward. Let's go up to 1996. So speaking of the Stick the Landing podcast, there's a very famous landing, You Can Do It, Carrie, that got stuck in Atlanta. And of course, Amanda stuck with it, right?
Yes,
obviously.
yes.
And had a running mate, JC Phelps, which we touched on, both of whom make the 96 team, dubbed the Magnificent Seven. Take us through those games. First, let's start with a gymnastics perspective. Tell us about what it was like gymnastically going through those things. And don't forget to talk to us about the hometown crowd.
Okay, I'll just start with Olympic trials.
Okay.
I can see this as clear as the day it happened. We were on a podium, and JC had finished, and she was in fourth place. And Amanda had just done her amazing floor routine that always lit everybody up because of that beautiful smile. She came off the floor, and I was like, I just held her, and she was like, "You did it." She goes, "Are you sure?" I will never forget that because of what happened before.
Right?
Are you sure? And I
Yeah.
said, "Yes, you made the Olympic team." And so, all the preparation, we get to Atlanta.
Did she say it like with seriousness, or was
No,
there
no, no,
jest?
no, seriousness, because
Yeah.
Amanda's a very humble young lady. And yeah, she was like, "I don't want to go through this
Wow,
again."
that's potent.
Yeah, it was potent. And so there it was, all of us or none of us, and so we all did it. And just a couple little things, like for when we were in Atlanta, we didn't stay in the village; we stayed in a house. And good thing that we did because of all that went on.
We're gonna talk about
Yes,
that.
and so we stayed in this amazing house, and that's where everybody bonded, and it was really good for the team. So anyway.
Which coaches were also staying in the house?
So it was myself and Peggy Liddick. We roomed together, and then Steve Nuno, Bella, Marta, Kelly Hill, and Mark Young.
Okay, so all of the coaches of the
Yes.
athletes were there.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't
Yes.
sure if they just said, "Well,
Sometimes
hey, because
if
you were the assistant
No,
coach." Or...
sometimes if athletes stay in the dorms, they only allow 2 coaches. But this situation, we were able to all be together, which I think was wonderful. But I think the moment was when we had podium training, which is like your dress rehearsal. So it's like the day before the competition. And we were in the tunnel, and we were getting ready to go out. And we hear this loud, USA, USA.
Oh my gosh!
Oh my gosh. And
Goosebumps again.
I look over, and Dominique Dawes is in a ball on the floor. She didn't think she could walk out. And Amanda had been named the team captain. And Amanda went over and put her arms around her. Here is this world and Olympic athlete. And the chanting was so overwhelming.
Holy
It just like
cow.
vibrated through your whole body. And so, we had practiced a lot about focus and that the crowd was going to be crazy. And so in training, we did a lot of stuff where we would turn the radio up, or we would clap and yell and, do all those types of things. And this team, they were prepared. It was the best prepared team I've ever seen in my life. And so we went out and we did the podium, whatever. Okay, so then comes competition day. And all I remember is I was the assistant coach to Marta Caroli, who I thought was the goddess of gymnastics.
And likely to beat you up if you made a mistake.
Exactly. And so I was kind of like the young, inspiration motivator that had been named as her assistant, because Marta didn't really like pull boards and mats and spot and things. And I was a female that could spot. So they named me as her assistant. And so as we go through the meet, I did my job, and, I had everything, of course, written down on my little cheat sheet, so I didn't make any mistakes as far as where everything
Wait, I think I know where you're going. I want to slow you down.
Go
a little
ahead.
Bit. Before we get to the last event, let's go to the second to last event. We have the Caroli's like hotshot kid is Dominique Moceanu.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And we're in Georgia at the Olympics, where we think we have our first chance to win a gold medal as a team. Moceanu does a floor routine to "The Devil Went Down to Georgia," which I'm sure was calculated and planned the whole time, right? Finishes her floor routine, lands her last pass. Did the roof about come off that building?
It came off the building, and the chanting was out of control. It was so loud. And obviously some of the other countries complained, but we definitely had the hometown advantage, but we also did our job.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we go to vault.
Yep, here we
which
go.
is our last event.
Here we go.
And we had talked the kids, laser focus, stay present, don't look at the scoreboard, don't look around.
And
they
through
didn't.
3 events.
They did.
It's neck and neck.
It's neck and neck. And which is why we didn't want to know where we stood. We just, all you can focus on is the journey, the process, and then the outcome is what happens. So the girls were great, and on vaulting, when you're the board puller and the mat setter, it's kind of an important job because every athlete sets their board and their hand mat in different places. And so Carrie Strug runs down and I think we all know what happened, and didn't know whether she was going to be able to do the second vault.
Yeah, does her first vault, blows up her ankle, lands on her butt. At this point, we don't know. We still believe we need Carrie to anchor this vault team and get us a score to beat the evil Russians, right?
And there I am setting the boards, and behind me, cheering on the team, but out of the corral is Bella, Marta, Steve, the whole gang. And I'm like, oh boy, did I set the board wrong? And I started
Oh my
looking at my
gosh.
papers. Did I make a mistake? Well, thank God I didn't. So I set the board. We didn't know whether she was going to go again.
You can do it, Kitty. Shake it off. You can do it.
That's where that came from, and is still a part of our sport and the world.
Yep.
You can do it. And
Shake it off, Kitty. You can
do
do it.
And she did it. And that
Yeah,
was
she did.
that was the
Landed on one leg. Now, I'm pretty sure we learned after the fact that we didn't actually need her vault.
correct.
That we already. When did you guys, as in the team, the coaches, or whatever, know we did it? We beat the Russians. We got the gold.
Almost right before we walked up. I mean, it was
Okay.
because everybody thought it was close. It wasn't.
So even when she was having to do that second vault, you still believed.
It was.
Lord,
we didn't know
need
whether
this.
that made us. We didn't know. We
Wow.
had no idea. And I think the other moment comes shortly after that. So they announced the third place, second place, whatever. And so when they did the first place, and Bella came out and carried.
Yeah, wait. Let's back up a
Okay,
little.
back-
Let's back up a little. Well, just
You're a
'cause-
storyteller, so you want all the details.
Yes. I want to know, how did you discover? Like, did you look up at a scoreboard and see a place? Did Nuno turn to you and go, Mary Lee, we did it? At what point did your brain understand we've gotten over the hump? We have beaten the Russians here in American soil.
You know what? It really was as it was announced. I mean, we were down there.
So you didn't know until they said it.
Until they
over the
started saying
You
it.
knew
It's
when the
not-
crowd knew.
Yeah, so remember, this is however many years ago.
Sure.
And so the technology wasn't the
Right,
same as it is
right,
now.
right.
So we didn't have all of that. And so I remember we're all sitting down there, and we thought we did it. Like, we thought we did it. But until when it was like third, then second, then first. And then, like I said, then Bella carried, the team went out. And the next moment that, again, is like as clear as can be, is the team standing up there, Carrie having her issue, and then playing the national anthem, and just standing there when they say surreal, not hardly comprehending that I was fortunate enough to be a part of a gold medal Olympic team.
The first one ever for the United States.
First one ever, yes.
Yep. And not only were you a part, you were 2/7 of the team, quite literally, and standing there, and like all the stars aligned, because again, it was
Yes.
in America,
Yes.
the first one ever, and
That's why it's so famous, and that's why it was the
Yeah.
Magnificent Seven, and it just was. Oh, I bought a huge clock as my souvenir, like a grandfather clock, and at the top I had this little plate put on it that says "A Moment in Time," and that's where I put all my memorabilia, and I still have that in my house.
Wow, a moment in time. That is cool. I'm gonna deviate for just a second. When my son was 10, we did this little program to learn about the birds and the bees. It's called Passport to Purity, and they suggest you take them off and you do this trip together. And at the end of you go through this worksheet and this book and whatever. And at the end, they recommend that you give him a ceremonial gift. And this is, you'll understand in a minute why I'm going there. So I bought a pocket watch that opens up, and so on the inside, I put a picture of he and I together from that. I put it in a shadow box with a plaque that says, I give you now and always my most precious gift, my time.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Right? Yeah. Oh, man. And
But especially in nowadays, where time is of the essence, and focusing and being present again is just such a challenging thing. So I think that's a beautiful gift. Beautiful.
well, thanks for saying that. You made me think of it when you talked about your clock. Wow, what an awesome thing. All right, we've talked a bunch about the gymnastics stuff from 1996, and mostly that's well documented. Anybody can go watch YouTube. They can't get what you just gave us there, but I want you to give us more. I want you to take us backstage a little bit. Did the coaches go out together? Did they hang out? Did they have fun? And give us something funny because in 21, when I was at the Classic, there was a bunch of us that went out Friday night and after the Hopes session or whatever, and had a good time. Now, I was an old man, so for real, at 10 o'clock, I left my assistant coach and the other 11 people at the bar and said, I got to go to bed. But there was one coach there, a good buddy of mine, who Friday at the Hopes meet had no casts on either arm. And then Saturday shows up to the junior session with a cast on his left arm because he may or may not have gotten into some trouble on an electric scooter after hours, having enjoyed his time. So did Kelly Hill get on an electric scooter and break her arm, or Steve Nuno beat up a bouncer or anything like that?
And I don't have that exciting of a story. We were just, I just remember, I don't know, we were kind of nerds. We were totally focused into what we were going to do. Now, did we celebrate afterwards? Yes. But up until that moment, we stayed in our house. We did our thing. We stuck to
Were you guys all friends? Or was there still a level of like some rivalry even?
Well, you said hierarchy. Okay, that's you know, so I mean, Bella and Steve always were in battle for hierarchy. And then, you know, Mark Young was just Amy Chow's coach, was just a good guy, easy. Yeah.
He'll fit in anywhere.
Yeah. And the girls all got along.
Dude shows up to like national team camps or developmental camps, and he doesn't even wear shoes.
Yeah. So we all really did get along. They were just like, for me, they were on a different level than me. But the females, thank goodness, were pretty easy. I mean,
and that was you, Kelly, Peggy. Okay. And Peggy was with Steve at Dynamo, right? And obviously Kelly was at Hills.
Yes.
Okay.
But Kelly did do some funny things. There was one of the preparation camps. It was right before Easter, and Bella was always great about holidays. And if we were at camp, Bella this one time, I don't know how you do this, but he colored chickens. And so we had all these red, yellow, green, blue little chickies running around. It was so fun. And, you know, they did a great job, him and Marta. So that evening, all the coaches went up and we were going to also color some eggs as adults. But what was supposed to be an egg coloring situation turned into an egg fight. And they were very raw eggs, and Kelly Hill got the prize for hitting Bella the most times with raw eggs. Yes. And this was after Marta went up to bed.
I'm sure.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. She done some serious enforcement.
She would have. I think Bella probably did get in trouble when he got home late and was covered in raw eggs.
A side note from a time when I was way back in 01, 02, 03, which we'll talk about, but not this particular story. You remember, of course, Muriel Grossfeld.
Of course.
Everybody knows her, famous gymnast, always there helping out at all these camps and whatever. But this lady was probably 4'7", maybe, and weighed
maybe 90 pounds.
Yeah, soaking wet. And I remember one time being at a camp, and she's there instructing floor. And she's trying to teach a drill on round-offs or whatever and explain why it's important to be in this position or whatever. And she goes, hey, I need a volunteer. And she just grabs my arm and pulls me up. And she says, here, stand here like this. And I said, okay. And I stood there like that. And she ducks her shoulder and leans in and almost knocks me over. And, you know, I'm not a big guy, but I'm a $150 at least, right? And she had to be 970 at this point. Like her and Moses used to play together,
hang out,
right? Yeah. And about knocked me over, and she was trying to explain, see, this is not a stable body position. Now stand like this. And I was scared because I knew she was going to lower the shoulder, and I'm going, I just hope she's right about this being a stable body position or I'm falling down this time. But anyway, the whole point of that is Marta Caroli was just as tiny, but just as savage. Like, I wouldn't want to take a punch in the face from Marta Caroli, and I feel like if I'd have thrown an egg at her husband, I might have had to take a
Yes.
punch in the face.
The thing about Marta could just look
And
at you.
obviously, people, I'm kidding. Marta wasn't
Yes,
punching
yes.
anybody in the face.
She never really raised her voice and never, but she had a look that could make kids stand up straight, coaches stand up straight. At the time, she was a good leader.
Hmm. I'm glad to hear that. All right, back to Atlanta.
Yes.
There was a bomb, right? Where were you guys? Did this happen? I can't remember. Was this after the gymnastics was completed? Were you still
Well,
in
it kind
Atlanta?
of went on a little bit throughout because it was a little bit and then there was a big one. So we had security everywhere we went, and it really curtailed a little bit of our venturing out.
Mm.
But we did get to go into the village and buy our million souvenirs and
Were
have
you
fun.
anywhere near when the actual
No,
explosion or whatever?
no,
So there was no time when you were like, "What's going on?"
not at all.
We'll move off of 96 a little bit here, and I want you to tell me, you went on tour?
Yes.
Like, with these guys on a tour bus and whatever?
I was the chaperone.
Oh my gosh. First of all, how did they rope you into that? Or were you just excited to do it?
I was excited to do it. I was at a place in my life where I could, and I really, really liked the girls. I liked the men's team back with Jason Gadsden and
Was Roethlisberger on the 96 team?
Roethlisberger, John
Blaine
McCready,
Wilson?
Blaine,
Yeah.
and you talk about a group of fun people. It was like you didn't think anything could be better than the Olympic Games winning gold, but the tour came pretty close. And
Really?
it was just, I mean, there was a boys' bus, a girls' bus, and you slept in these little, like, they were like stacked coffins that opened from the side, which was pretty funky. But
There's no chance. I guess as I got older, developed some sort of claustrophobia. There's zero
you
chance I'm
couldn't have
getting
done
one of
it.
those.
You,
No way.
you,
I go outside and sleep under the stars. I'm not doing that.
there were many times I sat at the little kitchen table and fell asleep there because I didn't really relish that moment. But the girls were fine at it. They loved it. And it was just to go from, we did 55 cities.
Holy moly.
And we were on a bus from city to city to city. And so when you did finally get a hotel room, sleeping in a real bed for me was like the luxury. But touring the country and the crowds, I don't know if you remember, but I mean, people were in love with gymnastics. And
Yeah.
the arenas were packed everywhere we went.
96 really did something for the gymnastics industry.
I agree.
I mean, we always have like these little Olympic booms or whatever, but 96 was special. It transformed, it made women's gymnastics in the United States like the premier sport
Yes, it did.
for women. It just
Yes,
did.
I
And
agree.
it did something for gymnastics businesses because it boosted enrollment like never before. And we were, as an industry, we were already starting to make a switch
Yes.
to a business mindset instead of a hobby mindset. And I know you can recall back in the 80s and the very early 90s, like these gymnastics gyms were like really mom and pop, and everything was handwritten with pencil and whatever. And we started to get systems and run
Yes.
businesses. And a lot of that was facilitated by the popularity generated through the success of the Magnificent Seven. So, all right, we'll skip ahead a few Olympics here. Let's go to '04, which was really cool because it was the first time the U.S. had a women's all-around champion, Carly Patterson, right? And I'm sure you were on the inside. You probably had some elites. I know nobody from your gym made the team that year, but you're on the inside. What did that mean to you guys on the inside to finally get over the hump and get the gold?
I think, first of all, Carly Patterson was another beautiful, humble young lady who worked very, very hard.
So she started in Region 8 in Louisiana with a guy named Johnny. And
Yes.
so I used to run into her a bunch at like the Region 8 camps and whatever until she went on to Texas to do that. So I can verify, indeed, this was a sweet, sweet kid who was humble beyond necessity for her station.
And when I think of Carly Patterson, I think of her coach, Evgeny, putting her up on his shoulder, walking her around the arena. And it was a moment in time all of its own because we had finally had an all-around champion.
Yeah.
And I think for so long, even though we had won as a team, it was always that a Russian would win or Romanian would win. And so I think it gave everyone in the U.S. the hope and perspective that we can do this. So I think that it was a little bit of a catapult for anybody can step up and work hard and do that. Not anybody, but if
Sure.
you work hard, you can do it.
Mm. All right. So '08 was China, and it's when the women only got a silver. It's amazing how fast the standard changes. Right, we're
Yes.
disappointed with a silver. Come on. Uh, but that was Shawn Johnson and Nastia Liukin,
Yes.
and we have all heard the rumors about personal tension between these two at that time. And I know you have said and we can see that the two of them are best of friends now and all that's aside, but you're in the thick of it. Tell us. Is it true?
It's true. They were. I don't think they're. I think they were good competitors for each other because their strengths and weaknesses were polar opposites,
Mm,
and I feel like because they accelerated each other.
mm.
You know, Nastia didn't have the power and the muscular build, and Sean didn't have the beauty and the flexibility. But I think it pushed each other to try to get better in their areas of weakness
Mm.
because they both wanted to win.
Yeah. Yeah. And how neat. We were talking about this with Jade and Brian Carey on the ride up here. We were talking about how I was personally rooting and continue to root for Jade and Brian Carey because of the daddy daughter story,
Yes.
because those two interact very differently than Valeri and Nastia did the first go around. Like they both looked like they were business suits and they had a mission and a job to do. And there was very little daddy daughter. Now, the second time she was trying for the team, and you could see daddy and daughter were there, and that was really cool. But
And it was that was really hard for both of them. As you can imagine, as a dad, it was really hard. But I do feel like in the first time around, it was their culture. It was how you did it back then, and they had such an incredible mutual respect for each other,
sure.
and they got the job done the best way they knew how at that period of time.
Yeah, and yeah, that wasn't meant to be any sort of criticism. Just
Right?
like they're just very they were on a mission,
They were
and
on a
and
mission.
and they were laser focused on that. All right, so we'll go up to 12. This is London, right? And we have Jordan Weber, Allie Raisman, and Gabby Douglas. Arguably the three best all-arounders in the world, and they're all on the same team. And Jordan Weber, I thought in 2011 was world champion in the all-around, and Gabby Douglas was just she was Gabby Douglas
She was Gabby
in
Douglas.
2012. So it basically was a battle for silver, and it was a shame that they had the two all-arounder rule,
Two per country.
and one of those two, Allie and Jordan. And I just remember for me in 2012 was seeing Jordan Weber realizing she didn't make the all-around final, but trying to be a good teammate and congratulate Allie and stifle her own sobs. What about 2012 for you being on the inside? What sticks out to you?
Kind of that story.
Hmm.
Because Jordan Weber was from Region 5, which is
Yeah.
where I'm from. And so I had watched her grow. I had watched her go from the JO program into elite. And she was another one that was an incredible hard worker, which I like that I'm repeating that because I believe that hard work, it pays off.
Yeah.
And she was the epitome of that. And I knew that these three girls were in contention and somebody wasn't going to get it. And I thought it would come down more to somebody making a big mistake but it came down to tense. And so that, unfortunately, that's my memory
And
of
both of
that.
them had good meets.
Both,
It's
that's
not
right.
like one of them can go, "Dang, I fell off the beam." Right?
Yes.
They both went out there, gave it their all, and it just happened to
Yep.
be that Allie finished
And
ahead.
the two per country rule is to try to keep it balanced at the Olympic Games from ginormous countries to small countries to give more
Sure.
people the opportunity, which I totally understand.
Okay, I'm glad to hear you say that. I don't feel that way. I'm like, this is the Olympic Games. Like, come on. Let's
But you could potentially have an entire USA team at finals. So what, right?
yeah, if
Okay.
we're the best. Like, I don't know. It's easy for me to say in a country that for the last 20 or 30 years has predominantly been the best or very close
Yes,
to it,
yes.
right? And then I don't know if you know, do you know Huri Gabishian? Um,
Yes,
she went to the
Iowa,
University of Iowa,
Iowa. Yeah.
but is has Armenian citizenship
Yes.
and went back and qualified to the games in Brazil, and then she and I are personal friends, and because like you, she's brilliant. I love hanging around smart people. I always hope that some of it'll fall on me a little bit. But anyway, watching her in those games in Rio, she's the one that she'd dismount the bars and then kiss the bars. She'd dismount the beam and kiss
Yes.
the beam because she
Yes.
got an Olympic experience. And she gets an opportunity because of the rule that Armenia gets a chance. And by the way, the whole country like blew up over the fact that she was there. And it's not like she was she wasn't doing a full on floor, for crying out loud. Like she was doing legit
Gymnastics. Yes.
Olympic gymnastics, just not quite China, Russia, America, legit Olympic gymnastics. You know what I mean? So Armenia had a lot to be proud of, and it's a great story. So maybe I'm
But
talking
the
myself
story
into
goes
agreeing with you.
but the story goes on. Look at today. Just today. Do you know how many NC2A athletes have qualified to the Olympics for another country? So because our country is so full of talent, these kids that maybe are really talented but probably not quite going to make our team, this rule gives them an opportunity also to be able to go to another country and get that Olympic experience.
Yeah. Yeah, one that they deserve and brings pride to that
Yes.
country, maybe even does for Armenia. And I know this for a fact because Huri has been named some kind of national coordinator for gymnastics in
It's great.
Armenia, that a position that was not needed until she went to Rio and did what she did. So like the sport is blown up over there. So I guess, all right, you talked me into it, Mary Lee.
Okay.
It's a good rule. You're right. All right. We'll go to 16. We'll breeze through much of that because that was Simone being Simone, and oh my goodness. So we won that meet easily. It wasn't even hard. We won the all around. Wasn't I say it wasn't even hard. It wasn't hard for me from my couch, I guess. Um, 2 months later, real black eye on the sport. We don't need to relive it. It's garbage. You think it's garbage. I think it's garbage. But eventually, after a bunch of nonsense, Tom Forster gets named national team coordinator. And kudos to him. This was, and it's my opinion, 100% the right man at the right time to help USA Gymnastics move forward in a positive way.
I agree with you. And I supported that role because we needed something different. We needed someone who could step in and just erase and replace. And I feel like he
Yeah.
did such a good job. And I don't know that many people could have come in under the circumstances that he did and do what he did.
I'm going to relate some firsthand experience to this. Back in '01, '02, and '03, we had some TOPS kids at camp, and we would have to go, and it was under the old regime where that bull crap was happening. And I would go there and leave with an ulcer because they weren't. I thought I was there learning how to become an elite coach, and all I was doing was getting yelled at because my kids weren't doing whatever they expected them to do. And then I'd go back to the gym and yell at my kids. You got me yelled at. You got to do this, which made me a jerk of a coach, right? I wasn't mature enough and I didn't have the tools to coach at that level at that time. And thankfully, through some of the garbage that was happening, my wife and I decided, hey, let's go back to the JO world and just live there at peace for a little while. Well, fast forward to 2019, and we have this super sweet kid move to us from Texas who wants to try elite. And so I come out of retirement to help this kid, and I tell her parents, I read them the riot act. I'm not going to camps. I'm not going to meets. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. And I did all of it. I go to the first camp, and the first few minutes there, I'm getting an ulcer again because I feel like, oh no, nothing has changed. Oh my gosh, it's just as bad. It's the same story, just different faces, right? Well, we're 10 minutes into it, and I decide, well, I'm going to crack jokes with some of these people and see what happens. And they all started cracking jokes back. And um, when we were in the system for those 3 years or 4 years that we were together in the system, I am here to tell anybody that'll listen, this is nothing like what it was back in the day. For the people that say USA Gymnastics had a real problem when stuff was going on at the ranch and whatever, they did. They did. It was hard. We didn't know better, right?
Right.
And as we got to know better, they made good changes. And a lot of those good changes came about under the leadership of Tom Forster. He made an environment in which I didn't need to have an ulcer when I was at these camps. I actually was instructed and encouraged and made to be a better coach. I always tell people that coaching is like, you have a tool belt, whether you know it or not,
Yes.
as a
Yes.
coach, right? And when I was a young coach, I'd have a couple of drills in there, but always at the bottom of that belt was anger and yelling, right? And so if I was trying to help a kid learn a blind change, and this is an actual story that I had this really great kid who had a great gymnastics career. Her name was Lexi Taylor. Um, and she might have been a level 7 trying to go level 8, and we were learning blind changes, and I couldn't get her to do this blind change with her stupid legs together. And I had exhausted every drill I had, every tool in my belt was gone. And I started yelling at her, and I got really upset. And I remember I might have thrown something on the ground. Why can't this stupid kid get this thing? This is what's going through my mind. So I go into my office to cool off. And I just have this introspective moment. This is way before 2019, only a couple of years after I've decided I'm just going to be JO. And I said, why am I really angry? Like, this kid's taken 100 turns. It's not like she jumps up there and goes, I think I'm going to piss off Coach Ken and have my legs apart, right?
Yes.
She's trying. She wants her legs together. I want her legs together. So why am I really angry? Well, I'm really angry because I've used up everything I've known how to do to get her legs together. And so I'm really angry with me. And that started
Such a good point.
a paradigm shift in me, that when I reached a point where I started to get angry like this, I said, I'm going to stop doing whatever it is we're doing. We'll come back to it in a couple of days. And
Yeah.
I'm fortunate I'm accidentally connected to some really smart gymnastics people that I could call. I could go home that night and I can call Milan Stanovich. I could call Ray Nat and say, man, I need some drills. Can you help me? And these guys take my calls and they would give me the stuff. So I'm a person, I need accountability. So I went to one of the guys that was a business manager at my gym at this point and said, hey, if you hear me raising my voice in the gym, I want you to just come over and say dumpster. That'll be our code word. And it's because we had an inside joke that was stupid and immature, but the word dumpster would make me smile because of the joke, which would de-escalate my anger. And I would know that he's noticing I'm heading to a place that I don't want to be. This isn't the coach I want to be. I was super happy with the coach I was when I was yelling at kids because we go to meets and we get results, but I couldn't look in the mirror because I hated the man I was. And fortunately, we learned those lessons, and clearly USA Gymnastics learned those lessons because the
Yes.
environment at all of those camps, it was like everybody else had the same epiphany I had. And there was none of that nonsense at those camps at that time. So Tom Forster was a good hire, according to Ken Harris. Now, according to Mary Lee Tracy, obviously you supported the hire too. Talk to me about the insights that you had over the regime change, even the growth that you experienced in those 25 years from
Yes.
96 to whatever 2020 or 21 and whatever.
So when Tom took over, it was drastic, and some people still wanted the old regiment, and they wanted Tom to be more disciplined, more strict, and it just wasn't the time or place. And Tom did a really good job of managing that. The other thing is, Tom held not just athletes accountable for their behavior, but coaches. And if Tom thought you were pushing the line, he had no problem coming up and saying something to you. And all the coaches really respected that because he was really looking after everybody. I think the other thing that came up in this whole process, though, was when you mentioned the toolbox. And for me, I totally could be on the same page as you, where when we were younger, we didn't have enough tools in the toolbox.
Exactly.
And when you ran out of all the tools that you knew, the next thing to do was you got angry. And sometimes you were more angry at yourself because you couldn't figure out the solution to
Which
the
was
problem.
the thing I didn't realize until that day with Lexi Taylor.
Yes, because we are solution-oriented people. So when we don't have any more resources to get a solution, we get angry. And those days have changed. And a lot of that is because now there are so many resources to get even more tools. And a lot of the tools have gone beyond just the drills. I mean, so many of the tools are mental training, train the brain. If the brain is the strongest muscle in the body and it controls all the other ones, then why don't we train the brain?
Yeah.
And so I really feel that who have done a world of study to become a better coach, I have a toolbox that's overflowing so that I don't ever have to resort to that again.
Praise God for that.
Yes.
And a quick shout out to both Wendy Bruce and Doc Alley, who have
Yes.
both written excellent
Yes.
programs that we used when I was coaching high level gymnastics. And we would alternate. One year we'd do Doc Alley's program, and the next year we'd do Wendy's so that it would be fresh. But we literally had dedicated mental training time where we didn't even go inside the floor of the gym. We went into the party room in the
Yes.
gym, and we
Same.
sat down and we did the workbooks, and we try to utilize those tools, and it made a big difference in our ability to coach and their ability to cope, right? So
And also educating the athletes more. So not only do we need more tools in our toolbox, the athletes need more tools in their toolbox. So,
yeah,
we mirror behavior. So if we can also help them in controlling their anger, their frustration, but we have to give them tools. And that's where I feel over time there have been so many champion-minded athletes by Alistair McCaw. Amazing book for an athlete. It gives them the tools for their toolbox.
mm,
So I've also done a lot of that currently with our athletes is when we have what we call train the brain or sports psych, we are now educating them. So everybody is becoming more educated on communication, on the tools, on the brain. And I do think that the sport is in a much healthier place now.
not perfect, of
Of
course,
course not.
but better, and certainly it's better at the national team
Yes.
level. All right, so I want to say, as someone who has the utmost respect and admiration for all that you've accomplished in your career, probably, if you don't mind me complimenting you a little bit here, probably the most admirable trait about you that I have witnessed is your willingness to continue to grow and get better. It's inspiring. Can you tell us just one or two of the lessons you've learned along the way and adjustments that you've made in your coaching style that have made all the difference, aside from the one that you just gave us about the mental training?
I think all of that, but more open communication and making sure that athletes are not afraid to speak to me.
Mhm.
And one of the words I learned over time was a rhetorical question. And someone, maybe Doc Alley taught me that because I was pretty good at asking rhetorical questions. And after a while, if you do that, they're not going to ask you questions anymore. They're not going to come to you. So I think what I changed the most was I was more aware of my communication and my ability to listen to their response or to listen when they came to me with an issue. And then together we problem solved it, whether it was an injury, whether it was a stress outside of the gym,
Mm.
school, whatever it was, we would find solution together.
That's great. You and I talked on the way here about my and statements that I always wanted my athletes to feel like they could come up and talk to me about, well, hey, my wrist hurts today,
Yes.
or my mom and dad were fighting. I'm in a bad mental place. I wanted them to be able to feel like they could come up to me, and I wanted them to be the first ones to offer the solution. So they had to say, Coach Ken, my wrist hurts today, and I think I need to not do vault. Or instead of doing 10 hard vaults today, can I do 2 hard vaults today and then tumble track vault the rest of the day and whatever? And then sometimes it just wasn't their solution wasn't practical, and I'd have to make adjustments. But what they always felt when I give them an and statement is they felt involved in the process to
Yes.
solve their problem. Like they were heard. I acknowledged that, oh, you do have this problem. I did not dismiss it. And then we worked together to create the solution. So,
Teaching problem solving, I back in the day when kids would go off to college, some of the college coaches would say the hardest thing about taking on elites is they don't know how to solve their own problems.
mm,
Because back in the day, the style of coaching was we were dictators and we told them every move to make, basically when it was time to go to the bathroom. Oh,
yeah.
right, everybody. And so now, and I listened to them. I listened and I was like, you're right. And that was another turning point for me in trying to give kids more skills to come up and speak to you and how to open the situation. I'd like to talk to you about something, but I have a solution. And kind of like what you were just saying, my ankle still hurts. So I was thinking I would do 5 tumble sets on the tumble track, and then I would do this. And they were then there solving their own problems.
Yeah.
And that's what
And you
life's about.
were validating there. It's not, you weren't
Yes.
dismissing, oh, your ankle doesn't hurt. Get out there and go there, which leads to a much stronger bond of trust between the athlete and coach, right?
Yes.
And something we talked about a little bit in the beginning of this podcast is it's the trust that the athlete ultimately has in you that allows you to push them to their maximum potential.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Of all the great things that you've accomplished in your career, give me 1 or 2 things that you're most proud of?
I would have to say, well, there's 2. One is my daughter.
Mm,
So my whole life of her growing up, I was traveling around the world. And at the time in gymnastics, the blessing was I was allowed to travel her with me. And so I took her to countries and hired nannies and did all kinds of crazy things so that she could come with me. And I think that I was afraid, even though I did that, that she was going to hold that against me, that I wasn't present, I wasn't there, and sometimes I wasn't. But I'm most proud of the fact that now she is running my gym and she is the head coach and
and doing a great job, by
and
the
she's
way.
better than me.
Yeah, there's no fall off.
No,
Like I've seen the kids.
she is
I've been at your gym and watched the workout. For crying
she's
out
much more patient than I ever was, and I respect her for that. And probably the other thing is watching my former athletes. So I used to watch them compete NC2A. Now I watch them coach
loud.
NC2A.
Man.
Right now, I think I have 8 um, former athletes that are coaching universities, and I have 3 that own 1 or more gym clubs.
Wow.
So I that makes me really proud.
Yeah, you have lots to be proud of. So if I was going to answer the same question, I won't name names on this, but we had a kid come to us a bunch of years ago after I had matured, and that's important because I wouldn't have been able to handle this
Yes.
when I was immature. Who was broken. She had just finished level 8 and was trying to make her way into the elite world via hopes and whatever. And through whatever mistakes that her previous set of coaches had made, they broke the human being. And I am most proud of the fact that I was willing to be patient enough to take the time to put the kid back together and prioritized putting the kid back together over putting the gymnastics back together. And eventually the gymnastics came. And
But if you would have reversed that
yep,
journey, it would have never
I
happened.
wouldn't have. You're right. You're right. And that is probably and the reason I'm so proud of it is in the previous 30 years of my coaching or whatever, I 100 out of 100 times would have reversed it. I would have tried to just
Yes.
fix the gymnastics and forget the kid.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, I said, not this time. I'm gonna put this kid back together, and so that was great. And then legacies, like we talked about this morning at breakfast. Like when my wife and I, we always like to have tangible yardsticks. This is how we know we are succeeding when.
Yes.
And when we opened the gym and had a team, we said we will know we are successful as team coaches when 20 years from now, when our gymnasts have kids of their own, they sign their kids up for gymnastics. And if they live anywhere near Murfreesboro, they sign them up for gymnastics at ETC. And here we are 24 years into business, and we have literally dozens of legacies
It's
running
beautiful.
around our gym. And that,
Not to
and,
mention some of your staff.
right?
Is that the best when
Yes.
they know your system, they know how you operate? I absolutely love when my former athletes become my staff.
I have 2 people on staff for 20 years that were former athletes.
It's great.
Let's talk about Rachel some more. She's taken over. She's doing a great job. I guess you already said how much pride that fills you up with. I've got my son is 21, and he has partnered with me in a business venture in which we buy some gyms. And I can tell you the pride that I experience watching him at 21. Listen, he's a 21-year-old boy, so he's going to do dumb 21-year-old boy things. Like one time, an office worker asked him, and by the way, he's a part owner of this gym. Hey, what should we do about X, Y, Z? And then he said, well, I think we should do A, B, C. And then she retorted with, no, I think D, E, and F would be better. And then his retort was, then why did you waste my time and ask? Listen, son, you shouldn't talk to 40-year-old women that way, especially at 20
Yes.
years old. But in many aspects, he's so light years ahead of me. And that brings me a great deal of joy to know that, hey, if I could start so far behind this kid when I was 21 and end up where I am, just think. Think
Yes.
where Rachel's going to be,
Yes.
right?
And don't you feel too like I feel with Rachel because she lived the sport with me? She learned from my mistakes.
Well,
And
you would hope.
that's why I say today she's a better coach than I was because instead of repeating my mistakes, she learned from my mistakes and has made our gym even better. And so I ultimately respect her.
What's better as a parent? What's better?
Nothing.
Yeah, amen. All right, so if Rachel's holding down the fort right now at Cincinnati Gymnastics, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days?
So I, about a year ago, decided it was time, and I had said I was going to retire probably 3 or 4 cycles ago, and
Yeah,
then there
been there,
was
done that.
always something, some beautiful child that whatever. So I knew that when it was time, I would know it was time. And I knew it was time. And so I chose to semi retire because I still totally run my business, which I love now because I'm actually a bit of a business person.
All right.
I've taken some of my qualities that made me a successful coach and maybe tried to better my business. And I'm doing a lot of consulting, as you know, and I do some camps and clinics. And I also am working with the national team in Canada, which has been very fun and different. And beyond that, I'm a Gigi of two beautiful grandkids.
Man, obviously my kids are 23 and 21, so I'm a few years away, but I can't wait. I
It's the
really can't
best.
wait. Not to be a Gigi, but to be a Pops.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to be. All right. So you were talking about some consulting, and I know some of the consulting that you do. You've partnered with Iron Business Solutions
Yes.
to participate in sort of our team mentorship program. Why don't you tell us about what that looks like, some of the successes you've had, how much joy, if any, that brings you? And I know it does because you tell me all the time.
I absolutely love helping people, maybe not make some of the mistakes I did. I also like sharing my experience because I feel like experience takes healthy shortcuts for people. They can maybe not fall through some of the cracks you fell through that made you step backwards a couple steps. I like that. And I like the diversity. So, my clients that I have relationships with them just like we do with the athletes. And so there are times when it becomes more of a personal therapy session. Sometimes it's
But don't we need that?
of course.
Right. One of the things I say all the time when I go into these gyms and I consult for business um, is I have to learn to be a part therapist or psychologist because as gym owners, we often
Yes.
feel like we're on an island alone, right? Who do we call when stuff's all screwed up? We can talk to our spouses or whatever, but like we can't call the gym owner down the road because he's just wringing his hands, going, "Yeah, chaos at ETC, good for me," right? Who do we call? And
That's what they do. That's what I feel are the purpose of this has been. And the different things that each of the clients need and want is different. And usually each week they send me a list of what the topics are going to be so that if I want to do some pre work and prepare things, I do that ahead of time. Right now, just this week, I had one of my coaches say, I really need some help in recreating and starting a pre team. We don't have one. I feel like we need one. Can you help me? Oh my gosh, of course I love to do that. So it's everything, how to teach a sports psych class, how to create that. Um, Obviously, sometimes it's technical. They send me
sure,
videos and I critique the videos. I've even done like arm up verifications on Zoom with people.
nice.
So it's basically whatever you need. I hope my experience can fill that hole for you.
So right now, this mentorship program is basically 26 sessions throughout the year, one every other week via
Yes.
Zoom,
Yes.
right? And they essentially get Mary Lee to be their I like the word mentor,
Yes.
but originally we thought of it as maybe like a consultant role, but it really isn't. It's because you have the experience that you have and have lived the things, you really are like taking the next generation of people through what they want. And one of the great things I've always admired about you is you have always been willing to meet people where they are
Yes.
and not try to push them where you want them, but ask them and genuinely discover, where do you want to go? Okay, well, I think this might be the best route to go. And so,
And I like working with, it's not for me, the elite thing is fine, but for the most part, a lot of those coaches are doing their thing. I really like the developmental part of coaches and helping them to be better coaches. Like I think of what I wanted back then. I wish I would have had somebody that I could have used to help mentor me along. And there just wasn't available. And so I feel like when we work together, because they can also do part business and part Mary Lee, um, I think it's a great deal because we all need help business. And when we are so passionate as a coach, the business sometimes goes on the back burner. And I know for me, that was definitely one of my issues, which is a lot of the reason why we connected because we were in different places and what you had to offer was different than what I have to offer.
so your business is obviously doing differently now because you've let somebody else handle the team stuff, and you've picked up some excellent business tips from some really smart people out in Phoenix, even.
Yes.
And what would you say leading up to all of this was probably your most common business challenge?
I would say priorities.
Hmm.
My priorities were on that side of the wall and very little on this side of the wall. And I would make choices that on a balance sheet, I was putting a lot of our financial gains only into the team side. And I should have been putting more into the recreational side, the preschool side, um, even
Okay,
the
well, I'm going to
office.
defend you for a second
Okay.
because one of the things I love about Iron Business Solutions is everything we do is custom. We take a long time to try to discover who you are and what you want. And there's a story, I won't say gyms or whatever, but there's a gym in West Tennessee for years and years and years that always had very high level kids going off to college, level 10s, winning level 10 team state champion all the time, and a gym in East Tennessee that didn't. And if you talk to the owner of the gym in West Tennessee and said, "What do you think is what is a good team coach to you?" And their answer would be something to the effect of, "Hey, somebody who's constantly at JO Nationals, who has kids getting scholarships and whatever." And it didn't matter that uh, he started with 30 of those kids and 29 of them quit,
But yeah.
and 10 of those never want anything to do with gymnastics again. And this other coach almost never has a level 9 or a level 10, but always has 4 or 5 seniors graduating, whether they're
Yes.
level 7 or level 8. And you ask them what makes a good coach, and they say, hey, somebody who fosters the love of the sport and keeps kids in it and interested in it is a good coach. And the truth is, they're both right, Mary Lee, because when you own a business, you get to decide what is good for your
That's true.
business. And if what you at the time thought was good for your business was to have a recreational program that's good enough and strong enough to support my elite habit, then that's what I'm going to have. And if you decide, hey, I want to have a recreational program that makes me mega bucks, screw the team, right? Then that's for you to decide
That's
too.
right.
So I want to encourage you and say, hey, you weren't necessarily doing it wrong, unless when you were coaching all those elites, you were also saying, hey, I want this gym to make me rich, and I only want to work 4 days a week. Well,
That
I don't know
wasn't the
about
goal.
yeah,
That's right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I when I go around the country and I do these in-person consultations, or I do the same business mentorship program, I think I see three challenges in almost every single gym. The first one is they never charge enough. That the rule of thumb is how much is the guy down the road charging? And by the way, he went how much is the guy charging down the road from him and down the road from him? And what if the first guy was a bozo? The first guy just threw poop at a wall and it looked like the shape of 70, and so he said, "I'm going to charge $70 a month." Like that's not a good business practice. And so while I say that's the most common challenge, that is rooted in fear, and fear
Yes.
is usually rooted in lack of knowledge. So the solution to that is acquire knowledge and learn how to analyze your market, or call us. We have a product for sale that's really inexpensive that will analyze your market for you and tell you how much you should be charging. I think we did one for you guys
Yes.
maybe a year ago
Yes, you
or
did.
whatever, and encouraged you to go up. And did you follow the advice?
Yes.
And how
No,
many how many people quit?
they don't. And I was raised in a very middle class family, blue collar.
Sure.
And so there's philosophies that you were just raised with, and they weren't always the best for principles in
Yeah.
business.
So it worked out for you then when I
It
gave you the thing and you adjusted.
absolutely worked out. I don't know that we had one complaint.
Yeah. So the second problem I see that's very common in gyms is we are ineffective delegators. And that stems from a couple of different things. We call them directionless directors because everybody's got a director of stuff over here, but they have no direction to head in. And that stems from two things. One, I think some of the best gymnastics coaches are control freaks because control freaks pay attention to every detail, right?
Right.
But there's a limit to our capacity, like how much we can control. And so our gym gets this big, and in order for us to control everything, this is as big as it can get. It can't get any bigger for us to control. And the other thing it stems from is we don't love doing certain things. Like, hey, I'm a team coach. I don't love kinder gym. You're my kinder gym director, and that's it. So the solution to that is to have very clearly expressed vision, expectations, and boundaries for your directors.
Yes.
So we help them with that. And then the third thing is they don't have an exit strategy. Everybody opens a gym because they love it, but they have no idea how they're going to retire. How are we going to get out? And so those are the things that we help people with when we get there. So how can the viewer of this or listener of this podcast get some help with their team program or with their business? Well, they can reach out to Iron Business Solutions on social media. We've got a Facebook page, we've got an Instagram page, we've got a website, ironbusinesssolutions.com. They can reach me via email, which is Ken Harris, Iron Business, all one word, at gmail.com. And we can get them going on some really cool packages. In fact, we've got some good discounts running, even in the mentorship program right now. And we're in process of developing a new mentorship program. So instead of having to purchase Mary Lee Tracy for a year, 26 sessions, one every other week, is you can purchase the number of sessions you want and within reason define the timeline. So if you wanted 10 sessions in 5 weeks and wanted to do 2 sessions a week, we can do that. So be on the lookout for that stuff. We have what we call Gold Medal Team Mentorship Program. That's the 26th one that we do with Mary Lee Tracy. And right now, for people that click through the stuff that'll be on this podcast, we're going to honor not only our 2023 rates, but we're going to honor the 2023 rates and the discounts we had when we were doing congresses. So people
Nice.
will be able to get some significant price breaks for that. We have a similar gold medal package that includes 26 sessions with me to help you navigate your business challenges. Like you, I get a kick out of this. I like helping people. I'm a resource to gym owners, to my clients, because they face stuff that nobody expected. I wouldn't even expect to face because stuff happens. We deal with
Yes.
people and people are unique, right? And they call and say, "Man, I had this crazy thing happen. Can I bounce some ideas off you? Or how would you handle this situation?" Which gets us off of that island, right? We're not there by ourselves anymore. We have somebody that will hear an idea, maybe somebody who lives through some of that trauma, and either in some cases I've learned a hard lesson, or sometimes I got lucky and did it the right way and got a good result, right?
And I think the other good thing is we're still very active in our businesses. And what I have found recently is the struggles right now during competition season and fears, et cetera, parents, everything. I'm living it too. So, or my coaches are asking me for help. So it really helps me stay on task with what's going on for coaches.
So the people know, we're also starting this uh, pairing where they can get the platinum package, right? Which is gold medal Mary Lee, gold medal Ken Harris. You can get them both at an even further discounted price. And what's great is if you take advantage of this package, it doesn't have to be the same people. If your team coaches are not your business manager, or you're the owner of a gym and you aren't the team coach, your team coaches can be meeting with Mary Lee and your business manager can be meeting with me. And it's great. You're listening to Stick the Landing podcast by Iron Business Solutions. If you want more information about these and other great products, visit us on the web or social media. Links in the description. So we're running out of time here. And before we go, I wanted to ask you this is going to be a question I'm going to ask all the guests here, and it's a two-parter. It's my time machine question. So if you could go back in time, part one, and undo any one decision you've made, only one, and you get to undo it, what decision would you undo? And then part two, if you could go back in time and offer young Mary Lee coaching advice, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to give you one answer for both because
Okay.
for me, if I could go back, the word I would choose to share with all of you is balance. I was not the best at balance because of my passion. And I would work very hard that even though you don't always have a lot of time with your children or your spouse, be there, be present. Don't be talking one on one or playing a game, but looking at your phone or being on the computer.
Hmm.
I also feel like I was always afraid to take 3 days off and go away for a weekend, or I really thought that made a difference. And then, of course, as you get older and wiser, well, people get sick. Well, the kids go on vacation. And I was always making so many sacrifices for my athletes and not enough for my family. And so I would just recommend to all of you that family does come first. And I know there's times as a club owner where there are crises and you have to be there, but just make sure that you keep that balance. Also, for you, taking care of yourself. I didn't do that as well as far as making sure you do work out, make sure you do fuel your body because you're going to be a better coach if you do all of that. So, and these are also things that in this world are very common to do. Back when I was a young coach, nobody was there to tell you about balance and nutrition and
Mm.
fitness and balance your family. It just wasn't there. And now there's so many educational resources to help us do these things, but it's still ultimately it has to be a choice.
Yeah. All right. So if I was going to answer those questions myself, I would undo the fact that I got a vasectomy after my second child was born because at the time we were poor and whatever. We had enough money for our family, but I thought, man, more kids was just going to cost more money. And little did I realize things were going to blow up the way they were. I should have just trusted the Lord and then had like 7 children, man, because raising kids has really been
The
the third
best.
greatest joy I've ever experienced. The first being my relationship with Christ, the second being my marriage to my wife, and then the third, raising my children. And then offering myself advice. I think I would go back and tell myself to relax.
Yes.
That there
Yes.
were so many times when I really sweated little things and I got anxious and overworked up. You've heard the old saying, like a stitch in time saves 9, right?
Yes.
So I'd be a guy that even when you didn't need to, I'd put in 8 stitches so that just in case I wouldn't need 9 later down the road. And
Yes.
half the time I needed 0 stitches. So I would try to convince myself to relax. I doubt I'd listen to me, but
Now you would though. I would
yes.
if
Yeah.
somebody said to me, Mary Lee, you need to relax. I would be, oh, you're probably right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Mary Lee, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest and a role model for future generations. And I mean that. And coming all the way down from Cincinnati for this event. As usual, listeners and viewers, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. Mary Lee's the same place, Iron Business also. You can email me at kenharrisironbusiness@gmail.com. And until the next episode of Stick the Landing podcast, brought to you by Iron Business Solutions, I'm Ken Harris with Iron Business Solutions, and we'll have stories to tell and solutions to deliver for your business.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks for coming. Hey, if you enjoy this podcast, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media and leave us a review. Links in the description.